Okay, so we've got the recording started. This is going to be the office hours for homework assignment number 2. And as I said, it is recorded, so if you need to play back something later, you can go ahead and do that. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have down in the chat box, down in the bottom of your GoToMeeting screen. And I've also got some questions that I got in email over the weekend and actually over the last few days as well that I want to cover because I think that the answers will have value to multiple students. I'm guessing some other people might have a similar question. So I wanted to go ahead and do that. And again, this office hours isn't mandatory. And I know since we're doing it at a different date and time than normal. If you need to pop off because you've got another meeting that you have to get to or something else, do not worry. I definitely won't be offended. I realize this is during the workday for everybody, so I kind of expect that. And again, that's why I do record everything. So with that, if you have if you have any questions, go ahead and put them down in the chat box. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to start out by taking a look at the assignment itself. Okay, I've gotten a couple of questions on the assignment. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So what you should be seeing now is the actual, this is the same PDF that you guys get, you download. So if you can't see the PDF, please feel free to go ahead and open up the one that you've downloaded from the course website. Okay, so the first thing we're going to take a look at is the assignment itself. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating something called a case study. Okay, now some of you, depending on the field that you've worked in, may have had a different term for case study. Okay, and in this instance, what we're going to be doing a case study is going to be a document that contains several different components that basically the different components will allow you to have kind of all of your data mining findings and questions and analysis in one place. Okay, and you might think, well, why do we need to do this? Why is this so important? And the reason is we want to have you start practicing putting together these case study documents because inevitably, sooner or later, you'll get yourself into a situation where you're working on a project for a while and then you either get pulled off of it and put onto something else for a little while, or alternately, you might have to hand it off to somebody else, or maybe you've got to do a team briefing, but maybe it's you that is going to be joining onto a project, and so somebody else needs to have have this information ready for you. So this is something that you really want to kind of pay attention to and start getting yourself used to putting together these case study documents. This is going to be important down the road as in course 4, we are actually going to be reusing some of the data mining that you've done in course 3 in an effort to kind of minimize all the data mining that you'll need to do for the last 2 courses. And if you don't do a good job with your case study documents in course 3, you're really going to be setting yourself up for extra work in course 4. So, and also just as a reminder, as I said, if I'm going too quickly and you can't understand me, please just let me know. I will not be offended. As I said in the first office hour, when I am really interested in something and kind of excited about it, I will talk more quickly. So I try to slow down, but I will not be offended if somebody types me a message and says, "Hey, you're going too fast. Can you repeat that?" Okay. So what are we doing with this case study document? As always, you have your what to submit list. Okay, so make sure that you use this as a checklist. Okay, so there's a couple of ways you can set this up, and we'll talk about examples here in just a minute. So what you're going to be doing is, if you look at the details for the assignment, okay, so here is the details of what needs to go into your what to submit list. Okay, so you're going to choose a hospital. You can choose a medical center. Just pick something in your vision to be kind of a representation of this question that we're asking, okay? And you're going to you're going to create a briefing book, or you can use a pre-created briefing book that will be able to show you vested and non-vested patients, okay? So you want to be able to see the difference between non-vested and vested patients for the last 2 years. Again, it's up to you whether you want to use calendar years or whether you want to use fiscal years. If you do decide to use something like fiscal year 16, remember we are not complete with fiscal year 16 yet, so you may end up doing year-to-date numbers, which could throw off the way your charts and your graphs look a little bit. So just kind of keep that in mind. So you want to be able to show vested and non-vested patients for the last 2 years. Okay, so vested patients have had their exam, comprehensive exam. Non-vested are those who have not had the comprehensive exam. I did get a question, can somebody who is vested become unvested? And the answer is yes, they can become unvested. Okay, so kind of, think about how that might affect your data as you go along. Okay, and we also, on the course website, you should have a document, the VERA document. And granted, I have the one for 2012. If you have a more recent one, you can the reimbursement rates for the more recent updated one, feel free to go ahead and put those in. I just wasn't able to get it posted in time for the start of the course. So go ahead and use that. And as you are exploring your data sources, so it's recommended that you use a data cube. There are several different options out there for you guys to use. But at the same time, remember that you are really a data detective in this course. So one of the things that you want to do in this course is you can use any data source that you can come up with. So I have had people go to their local VERA coordinator and ask for some ideas there. Totally valid as a source. You just have to make sure that you are going to cite that source. Okay, cite that person as a source if you want to talk to your VERA coordinator. Okay. So as you're doing once you've get some data, you're going to create a preliminary case study. So preliminary case study means that you may not have all the questions in a case study completely answered yet to your satisfaction, but you've got to start on most of them. So what you're going to do is I tell you to use the checklist on page 21 of Module 3 lecture notes, and we're going to look at that in just a second. Okay, so you're going to put your case study together using that checklist, and then once you get the data, you're going to do complete your review of data section. I recommend downloading your data into Excel. If you like another format, you can definitely do it, but I think Excel is probably the easiest, and most people are quite familiar with Excel. And you're looking for differences and similarities between your two patient groups, so your vested versus non-vested. So one question I got was, are you supposed to pick a particular disease and see which patients are vested or not vested, or do it more generalized? And you want to go the other way with this one. So you want to go general to specific. Okay, so you want to start out by looking at vested versus non-vested. Okay, and then look at your demographics. So you might look at location, length of time that they've been a patient, any primary diagnoses that seem to be repeated, those types of things. I give you some questions to help you, and those are on page 22 of Module 4 lecture notes. And kind of think of those as guiding questions. You can go way beyond that, those questions, if you have some other ideas or you find something interesting. And what you're basically doing is you're looking for some patterns in that data. So jumping off point questions might be, how does your hospital compare with your vested and non-vested group percentages to the VISN or the national level? Okay. What do the vested patients look like versus the non-vested patients? Are there any significant similarities or differences we might want to be aware of? Okay. So you want to kind of think about looking for those comparisons. Think about what we did in the first assignment and how we can expand that into the second assignment. So you're going to look for 1 or 2 ideas for further investigation. And these are ideas that you think would be interesting to look into. Okay. So you don't try to think of, well, what does she want me to look at? Think about, based on the data that you got and the analysis you've done and looking at your findings, what things for further investigation would be interesting. Okay, you just need to give ideas. You don't have to verify that these are things that we need to look at. You just want to look for ideas of future directions. Okay, so that was one question, some things. Again, you're going to go general to more specific. So that was something that you want to use. And so when you're looking at pulling your data, you want to use the last 2 years. Again, you can use fiscal years or you can use calendar years. It's your choice. You just need to identify which you're going to do. If you do decide to use fiscal year 16, then remember that we're not completely through it yet. So you'll probably need to use year to date. We're, just about done, but officially it's not complete. So not all of the year-end data is going to be in there yet. So just kind of keep that in mind as you are looking through things. And And then one other thing that I'm going to talk about is when you submit your case study document, we'll talk about what exactly is in that, and I'll show you a couple of examples. You want to submit that again in a PDF format, and we'll talk about how to do that um, in as I go through the examples. Okay, we'll talk about how to do that with Excel. And with your last 2 years, yeah, you can use fiscal year 2014 and 2015 because those would be the last complete fiscal years. Totally okay. So if you want to use complete calendar years and do the last 2 years, then you might use calendar year 2015 and calendar year 2014. So that's totally fine. You can definitely use that because if you think about it, for both a calendar year and a fiscal year, 2015 is the last complete year that we've had for data. So you can definitely use that. However, if you want to look at, since we're almost done with fiscal year 16, if you want to use that instead, you can definitely do that. It's your choice. You just need to identify in your case study which you're going to use and why. Okay. So yeah, you can use 2014, 2015 if you want, or you can use 2015 and year to date 2016. Completely your choice how you want to do it. And again, the data that you are finding might kind of point you in one direction or another. Okay, so let's do two things. First, I'm going to show you the checklist on page 21, and then we're going to look at the question ideas on page 22. And then I will go through and then we'll go through the examples, okay, and where to find those. So let me find 2015. So let me get you guys over. Okay, so I am now looking at what whoopsies. Sorry about that. Let's move this over. So now what you should be seeing on your screens is you should be seeing the lecture notes. This is going to be lecture notes for Module 3. So the one that we're looking at is we want to look at components of a case study. So that's page 21 in your lecture notes. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this bigger so everybody can see it. If you can't see it, you can follow along in your lecture notes PDF. Okay. Same thing, it's page 21. So if you are taking notes, page 21, it's also in your assignment document, so it's listed there as well. So when we're looking at components of a case study, what exactly goes into this document that we call a case study? So you want to identify what is your specific question? What are you looking at and why are you interested in it? What's the point of looking at this particular data? Why are you doing this data pull? So what question are we trying to answer and why are we looking at it? Because a lot of times if you don't put the why in there, somebody's going to say, well, why are we answering this question? Why did we just spend all this time on it? So by putting both the question in there and the why with the question, why are we doing this? You, again, are kind of getting out from under that and getting the information available right at your fingertips, okay? You want to do a review of your data, so you're going to have a section on review of data. You want to look at what is the population we're looking at, okay? What are some attributes of that population that we're looking at? What have we discovered? And where are we getting our data from? Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about identifying data sources in just a minute, but you always, always, always want to identify the data source. Think about being able to answer that question when if you're in a meeting, you're giving a presentation and somebody says, well, I don't think that data is right. Where did you get that? Now, how many of you have sat in a meeting and had somebody say that, whether to you when you're doing the presenting or somebody else's data that's come up? And then we get into a big discussion about whose data is right and where did it come from and why did we pull it and when and all that kind of stuff, right? You want to get ahead of the game here. So we're going to identify where's the location of the data. Where am I getting my data? Okay. Then you want to identify, are there any patterns in data that you can see? Is there anything around time? Is there anything around place? Is there anything around person? So place could be the stop code where people are seen. Place might be where we're getting our vesting exams done. Place might be where do people live in relation to the medical center or the closest clinic. Okay, so there's a lot of things with place. Okay, time could be time of year, how many times somebody comes in, all that kind of thing. Person, again, could be, we're looking at uniques more than likely, but what about those uniques is interesting? Or what about those uniques can we make a picture? So if you're going to paint a picture in words of somebody who is vested versus non-vested, we can use those attributes up here to our data population and also the person at these different patterns to create that picture. Then we want to figure out some causes. Okay, so we're going to look at hosts, we're going to look at the agent, and we're going to look at the environment. So why do you think the situation as you've have found it. Why do you think that is? What do you think is causing that? So looking at these 3 items. Then you need to do some sort of validation, come up with an idea for validation. So you can use a decision tree. You do not have to use a decision tree. Maybe you're going to do run a regression analysis, thinking back to course one. Maybe you want to do a time study on something, okay, from course 2. So think about you need to validate your data somewhere, somehow, but you don't necessarily have to use a decision tree. You can use other means of testing. Then you also need to give some interpretation. So again, in this course, we're teaching you to go beyond just straight data pulling, and we're teaching you to be a data miner and a better data analyst. So if you're going to be a good, kind of run-of-the-mill data analyst, somebody sends a question in, you pull the data, and then you send it back to them. If you are going to be kind of an advanced data analyst and really kind of more of that data miner, you're going to go beyond that and you're going to do some interpretation and say, okay, based on what I know, based on what I know about patterns, based on what I know about where this data came from, based on my own personal knowledge base, my background, my expertise, what can I say about this data and these results? What can I say about where we might need to go with this? Or some additional questions that you might be interested in. Going back to our client, going back to our customer, our requester. And that's where kind of doing that results is a summary. Think of that. And interpretation is, okay, so based on what I found, now what do we do next? Okay, so again, page 21, and we'll look at an example of this in just a minute here, but page 21 of Module 3 lecture notes. So the other thing that I mentioned in the assignment is in Module 4, okay, and that is going to be, let me move Module 3, there we go. So now you're seeing Module 4, and we're going to go down here to page 22. Let me make it big again so everybody can see it. So page 22, Module 4 this time, page 21 in Module 3 and page 24 in Module 4, or 22 in Module 4, excuse me. So we're looking at the section that's questions for interpretation. Okay, so think of these as jumping off points. So when you're looking at interpretation and you're looking for those patterns and attributes, think about can you answer these questions? So who is your population? What do they look like? Who are you studying? Who is your customer? Now customer can be patient. Ultimately at the VA, right, we know that our ultimate customer is going to be the veteran, right? That should be a given. However, depending on your particular role within the VA, your more immediate customer may not be patient level. Your more immediate customer may be another department. So if you're in financial, right, your customers are going to be the departments that report their data into you that you help with budgeting. Okay, if you are in logistics, it's going to be making sure things like the supply rooms are stocked. You might be looking at, if you're in housekeeping, getting beds turned over and cleaned, getting operating rooms cleaned. So there's different things. Your immediate customer may not necessarily be the veteran. Our ultimate customer is the veteran. Everything feeds back into that. But your immediate customer may be another department. It may be a clinic. So there's a lot of different ways to interpret customer. Okay, so think about, what is the prevalence and what's the incidence of the different vested versus non-vested, the different types of diseases that you might, diagnoses that they might have, where their locations are. Can you see any potential patterns? What does national or VISN level data tell us compared to our local data? What do we know about causes? Okay, so again, you can see that these are all questions, again, jumping off points. You can definitely dive deeper, ask different questions, but these are some questions to start helping you figure out what to do about this. Okay, so that's something to kind of, just keep in mind that this is one of the things you want to, use this page 22 as your jumping off point for filling in that interpretation and results section in your case study. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, does anybody have any questions so far? Any more questions? Let me see, what else did I have? Let me give me 1 second. I'm going to look up some things in a couple of questions, reviewing some in email. So some people wanted to know, how do I find my non-vested? So some cubes will just tell you vested versus non-vested. You might also be able to do subtraction. So if you've got your vested population, you can subtract that from your overall uniques, right? And get it that way. And then when you're defining groups, you are going to define your group. So you're going to define who is your population, who are you studying? Okay, so you are going to define that yourself. That is not predefined. So when you're defining what group you're looking at, you're looking at some sort of local facility, so you're going to define that, and then define what does that population look like. If we were going to get a snapshot, if you were going to use words to paint a picture of what a vested patient versus a non-vested patient look like, those two different patients look like, what is, describe to me what that patient would look like. Who would I expect to see? Who would be the most common type of people with that? Okay, and then I think that's that question. I'm looking for. I think that's kind of the biggest questions that I've gotten so far. So if there are not any questions on kind of the lecture notes so far, let's do this. Let me make these. We're gonna go and I'm gonna show you where to find. Da, da, da. Okay. So now you should be able to see. I'm going to show you guys where to find find these examples if you haven't already found them. Okay, so over here, this is the course webpage. Should look pretty familiar to everybody, I hope, by this point. If it doesn't, you better get familiar with it soon, I guess. So obviously, you can see here I've been posting my announcements. So we'll have a new one for week 4 here in after the office hours. But what I want you to go down to is when you're looking for assistance with this particular assignment, go ahead and on the left-hand side over here, where all of our links are, if you go down to the homework help page, okay, you'll see a section here at the bottom, homework number 2, case study examples. Okay, and here are a bunch of different websites, a bunch of different files that you can open up for examples. Yours does not need to necessarily look like this, but this is a way to set it up that I find pretty intuitive in terms of trying to explain it to somebody else. And we'll take a look at these in just a minute. Also, you can do you don't have to do your example, your case study in Excel. You can do it in Word. What I would recommend if you are doing it in Word is each of the 7 components of a case study, you need to have, I would start a new page with each of those, just for clarity and kind of organizational purposes. And so we will take a look at that, but I just wanted to show you guys where to get to those. So if you're on the main page, so we'll do that one more time. So on the main page, go all the way over here. Under further readings, you can see homework help. Click on homework help. And then you are going to go down here to homework 2 case study examples. Okay, and they're all listed there. So I just wanted to show you guys that. So let's take a look at some examples. Okay, let me get this one out of the way. This is really tiny, so let me make it big for you guys. One question that I had was, what do I do with my executive summary? So we're supposed to have an executive summary, right, in this? So a couple options for your executive summary. You can either put it, a lot of times what I will do is I will add a tab here in front of table of contents and do it that way. So I will put a tab in front of table of contents and just put executive summary right there. And an executive summary is 1 page or less of text. So executive summary is not a full-on multi-page memo, 1 page or less. Okay, if you decide to do executive summary in Word, you can submit 2 documents. So you'd have one PDF that has the executive summary in it and one PDF that has your case study. But I need to see both the executive summary and the case study document. Okay, so here we'll delete that off. So anyways, so let's take a look at case studies and see what these look like. And again, this is the examples that you can find on the course website under that homework help section. Okay, so I have tabs. The way I like to set them up is I've got tabs, table of contents, just to tell me what is where. I've got a tab for analysis. And this one I decided to use a decision tree. I've got some stuff for demographics, some stuff for location, treatment type, versus another one, and then high cost stuff. So this is just an example one that I put together. So in this, I've got a list in my table of contents of kind of what is going on, so and where the data is located. So I've got overall general analysis is 1A, differences and similarities is 1B. Where's my data coming from? 1C, and then I start, here's your tabs of data. Any trends? Then I've got my causes right here, right? Picture of the decision tree and some testing stuff. Okay, so here on the analysis page, here's my items along the left. And then here is what I was going to do in that. So what am I trying to keep in that? So, and then here's the analysis portion. So we talked about going beyond just pulling data out and doing some analysis. So overall general analysis of what my patient's population looks like. Okay. So this is what particular group has diverse patient population, greater than 40,000, low numbers of non-vested, differences and similarities. So non-vested patients include all ages, genders, service area, and priority groups. No significant differences with vested. Yours might be similar, yours might be different. Every facility is kind of interesting. This particular one, the data was pulled. Here's where the data cube was pulled. Here are what we compared was uniques, prorated persons, and cost by year. We did national, vision, facility, and division. Then we looked, here's the years that we pulled the data for, and the list of tabs and what is in each tab. Then we looked at, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. So watch your screen go. Woo. So a discussion on trends. Okay, so this is your time, place, and person. So what are we finding here? Okay, time, place, and person. Then we went over the causes. So host, age, and environment. We did a decision tree, an example one. And then in terms of testing, we decided to use the decision tree to do testing for this particular one. But again, you could use a regression analysis. You could use time and motion study or time study, all kinds of things. And then the interpretation on this one is not really that great because we want to talk about a little bit more about kind of some of these other components. And then the results were kind of results, think of summary. So when we did this, a couple of things that I want to point out about this particular one that you might want to look at. So decision tree is pretty standard. Hopefully you guys know how to do decision trees after courses 1 and 2. Again, you don't have to use a decision tree. You can use another method of validation. So maybe you're going to run your validation 2 different cubes. That would be perfectly valid data validation. So in our demographics, a couple of things here I want to point out that need to be added into this particular one now that I'm looking at it is I've got my data here, but I need to put on my data source on the actual tab. Okay, and the reason for that is, and you'll see in a lot when you guys, I'm going to start uploading graded feedback files today, and one of the things that you'll see on several different pieces or different papers, and so it might be on yours, it might not, is I'll say that you want to identify your data source whenever you have just data. Okay, so identify it on or near a graph or a chart, on or near a table. So identify your data source. Okay, so in this instance, our data source will be, so I'm just typing. So I use the patient cost and workload cube for this particular data source. Okay. Then you also want to add in any comments. Okay, so you want to add, another thing you want to add onto here is any comments about your data. So what are some things that I am noticing? So when I'm looking at percentages by gender, gender percentages seem pretty equal. So there's no difference really whether you're male or female in this particular grouping. It looks like my highest non-vested, if I look over here at our by age group, right? Our by age one over here, when we're looking at that one, right, it looks like our younger veterans are the ones that are really not vested and our 85 pluses. So highest non-vested is, so probably younger than that 44 and older than 85. Okay, so you want to put some things. Why? Because basically what you want to do on your case study is tell whoever's looking at it why it is important. Why did you decide to keep this data or use this data? Okay, so you want to have data source on the page and you want to have comments on the page. Okay, so kind of the same thing here. Here's we're looking at treatment location. Again, this one was supposed to have. So we want to add your data source. Oops, and I cannot type. And you want to have comments about the data. So what is this data telling me? Okay. So on all these different pages, all the different tabs, you want to have those two things. Okay, so just as an example. So let's take a look at another example. Let's look at this one. So this one's a little bit different. This one's got pretty colors. And it's arranged a little bit differently. So if I were personally going to do this one, I'd probably arrange it a little bit differently. But that is me. So I would probably put my case study over here in the first tab. So I'm looking at the tab. You look down at the bottom down here, if you can kind of see where my mouse is moving. So I've got right now, this one's got XYZ, Vision 12, a national case study and a decision tree. So I would probably put the case study first and then go the other ways around. So in this case study, let's make this a little bigger because it is very small to me too. Can you guys see this, or is it too? Well, you can download it off your own too, off of the website as well. So here's our question. Okay, case study, how can we raise the percentage of vested patients at the XYZ VAMC? What are differences or dissimilarities? Here's my review of data. Here are some patterns in data. Here are my causes by validation, interpretation, and results. So then when we're looking at this, here's all sorts of fun graphs and charts, right? So again, what you want to do is we want to tell me, you need to say on here, what does this show? So in this, it looks like on here, right? When we're looking at this particular graph, the all diagnosis class, it looks like we're increasing. Okay, and it says patients, but I don't know if we're increasing the overall patients or are we increasing non-vested patients? What's going on here? So like here we looked at non-vested by category and it looks like this. And the reason you want to put comments in is exactly why I'm kind of talking about it now. So it's been a while since we've looked at this. So we're not sure what exactly it was we were intending to show with this. So you want to put those comments in. Again, if you come back to it in 3 or 4 months, will you be able to understand why you pulled the data that you did and what it's telling you? Or if you have to hand it off to somebody who's never looked at this before, or you're going to make a presentation. Also, the other thing is people tend to split things up. If you email somebody a file, they tend to kind of just take the parts they want and forward it on to somebody else. And you may or may not be available for discussion, right? So if somebody just forwards this tab on and says, hey, look at this. This is pretty interesting. Without any comments or without any data source listed on it, we don't know where we are, where the data came from, and we don't know really what we're looking at. Okay, so we've got some great percentages. So we've got here, and we've got another decision tree. So this is a different decision tree. Okay, so is patient vested? Yes or no? Then where did they go? And where did we find them? Okay, so just as some examples, case studies that you can download. So when you're putting this together, one of the things I wanted to show you guys is I would prefer that you guys, I'm asking that you do it into PDF. So how do you do a PDF with this? Okay. So when you're doing a PDF, you will have to adjust your pages to show the print area. Okay, so when you're doing a PDF, you're going to do File, Print, and I'll type this out in just a minute because it won't let me do a split screen in this, so I will type it out in just a minute in the order of operation. So you're going to do File, Print, just like you always would, and then when it says print this page, active page, or active sheet or entire workbook, and you want to print entire workbook. But before you do entire workbook, you need to go to your layout and you need to take a look at your page layout, okay? Because when you're doing your page layout, that's going to tell you what it's going to look like when it's printed, right? So in this instance, you can see this is kind of a little messed up. So what you can do when you're doing your printed, and actually, let me see. I'm going to try to do this in one other way. Give me one quick second. We'll type this out. I'm going to try to open something else and see if that'll work better. I'm going to flip over to a different version of Excel because this one is not probably the way yours is going to look when it shows out to printing. So just a second. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is, I want a whiteboard. Hang on. I'm trying to figure out.
Unmuted.
Okay. Did you guys find, is the audio there now? Okay, I don't know what happened there. That was odd. Okay, so everybody's got audio back? Okay, yay. So I don't know what happened with the audio and where it went off to. That was kind of goofy. Okay, so let me try, I'm going to try opening this file here in a different format. So what did you guys hear the bits about the case study files, or were those kind of hit and miss? So if you, okay, not how to convert yet. Okay, cool. So we will, let me get them open. I'm going to open them in another format, so that another version of Excel, just so you guys can see it, and then I'll switch over to that. So give me one quick second and I'll show you how to do the conversion, because sometimes Excel is kind of goofy. So hang on. Let's look at, okay, this one's the weird, one of the ones that's weird. So we're going to look at that. So just a minute, and hopefully it will open and not get kind of goofy. Okay, so I don't know what happened to my whiteboard here, because it went away and I don't know where it went. So we'll do something in Word here in just a second. But first right now I'm waiting for Excel to open. Okay, so now let's see if this will show. Let me see if it will show. Will it show this? Okay, I'm trying to figure out why. So let me stop showing the screen and start showing the screen. So just give me one quick second and we will figure this out. So please hold one more time. Okay. Why can I not find this? Okay, so we are going to try. Well, this is interesting. Okay, so what I'm going to do is give me one quick second to get a couple of things organized, and then I will get. I'm going to just have to share my whole screen. So just a second while you guys are waiting. So I know there's nothing really interesting happening at the moment. So just a second with that. Okay, let me try to get that back. Where did this go now? There we go. Okie doke. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my whole, whoa. Okay. So I think, can you guys see this, or is it not? Somebody tell me. Okay, good. Okie doke. Okay, good. That just wanted to make sure that this is, because normally I don't have to share my entire screen, but for whatever reason, this version of Excel it's not looking at. So this is our case study, and if you're going to convert something, right, you're going to go to File, and you can do your export, right, and then I create this. Yes, yes. Remind me later. So anyways, one of the things you want to do is I can publish it, and I've got a bunch of different things that I can publish here. Okay. And what you want to do is you want to go to your options. So before you hit that publish button, click your options. And here you can see always says publish what. Okay. So it defaults to active sheet, but you want to publish the entire workbook. Otherwise, you'll only get the page that you're on. So publish your entire workbook and then click OK. Then when you click publish, it'll publish all of the tabs, not just the one that you're on. Does that make sense? Okay, so you're going to do publish as PDF, choose that options button, make sure you've selected entire workbook, and then hit OK and then publish. Okay, yes. But what we're going to do before you do that, you want to double check and make sure that everything looks okay. So we're going to go to page layout. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to look at your page setup. Okay, so there's a couple of different things that you want to look at. So first, look at your orientation. In Excel for these types of things, I usually like putting it in landscape because I get more than one column on it then. Okay, so that's one of the ways to take a look at. Okay, then what you're also going to do in it is you want to take a look at your page breaks and you want to look at your print areas. Okay, so when you're doing that, you can also look at your margins if you want, but basically what you want to kind of do is take a look at, that's where you're going to set everything up is over here in your page layout. So if you go over to view, you can do page break preview. Okay, and this will show you what's going to be on each page. So right now I've got page break preview, and you can see here I've got page 1, page 2, and page 3. Now sometimes what will happen if you don't put it in, if we put it, here we'll do this. If I put the orientation to portrait, now look, I've got page 1's got some questions, page 2 has some questions, page 3 has data, and page 4 has data. So if I'm going to send this to somebody, this doesn't make any sense, right? Because I've got the question shows up on page 1, these 3 column headings, and then page 3 is where the information is. So that doesn't make any sense. So if yours looks like this, go into your orientation, flip it to landscape. Now it makes more sense. You might also, depending on kind of where things are set up, you may need to move this page break, and you can, if you click it until hover over it until you get the double arrows instead of your nice white cross here, you can then click and hold and move it up or down. Okay. And you have to, unfortunately, do this on every tab. So if we look at XYZ, and we're going to go to View, I'm going to do Page Break Preview. Do you see how now the page break here on page 1 is kind of, I've got fiscal year 12 hanging out over here by itself. And then this one, the graph might print part on page 6 and part on page 10. So that's a little goofy. So we have to kind of play with it a little bit. So first we'll check orientation. I've got portrait again. So does landscape make it better? A little bit. So what I might need to do is play a little bit with my page break. So we'll kind of get this one up here. Let's do that. Okay, now things are looking a little bit better, right? So this graph might be hanging out a little bit, so I might need to move my graph over. So it's in my blue lines. Move these over a little, whoops. So now these are, so page 1 is this bit, page 2 is this bit, or page, what number are we on? 2, 3, 4. So we might need to change a couple other things over here. So you can kind of see. So you have to play with it a little bit because like in this instance, right, it splits our data up. So maybe what we'll do is we'll do this one down. So we get all of this particular group down here. And now you can see these are in, but now my graphs are kind of, see, sometimes you have to play with it and Excel is not so pretty that way. But I've got 8 pages here for this particular one. And generally speaking, you're not going to have to move all of this around. So we'll move these over here a little bit. Whoops, come on. Whoopsies. Wrong thing, move the whole graph, not just the insides. So once you get it looking the way you want it, make sure you hit save. And then when you do file print, it'll print and choose all, the entire workbook, then it will print everything. But sometimes you have to kind of play with these page breaks a little bit to get things to look nicely. So if we look at this one, I'm gonna go to view, page break preview. Like this one actually looks kind of nice. So this one turned out pretty well. We've got logical page breaks in here. We don't have like breaks in the middle of my tables, all that kind of stuff. So this one's probably okay. Once in a while you get lucky and it looks like this. Most of the time you're gonna have to kind of mix it around. And the thing is you really only have to do that once, but it's to your benefit to do it because again, when you're sending files on a PDF version versus a straight Excel version, PDF, people can't just change the numbers around and change the graphs around and then email it off to somebody else and your name's still attached to it, but you don't know what they did, right? Also, another reason to go ahead and put those comments in here and put the data source in. Okay, so if we do decision tree, what does this one look like? So this one fits on 2 pages. So let's go look at our page layout. We have a portrait again. So if we do landscape, yay, now it fits on 1 and we'll make this kind of, no, I don't want to do that right now. I'm going to do my page break here. Move it over just to make sure I'm all the way on. So there I can fit the decision tree all in 1 page. Then once you get done with all your tabs, click save, and then you're going to do your file, export, create. Options, don't forget your options, and instead of active sheet, do entire workbook. You're going to click OK, and then you'll click publish. Does that make sense? Excel and PDF is not as intuitive, but it is really, 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 really handy. Okay. The other thing I will tell you, another little trick about Excel, so let's go back. I'm going to put these into normal mode again so we can see them. Another trick about Excel that a lot of people don't know is that if you want it to open to a particular page, Excel will always open its file after it's been closed to the last page it was on when you saved it. So if you want the first page to be the executive summary or the case study, make sure you click the case study tab or your executive summary tab, then click save, and it will when I open the file or when you open the file the next time, it will open to that particular page. If I click decision tree and then click save and I'm on the decision tree, the next time I open the file, it will automatically open to this last tab. Okay, so I always try to go back to what do I want to see first. So generally it's going to be an executive summary tab or it's going to be this full case study tab. So in that instance, I'm going to make sure the last thing I do before I close the file is choose what tab do I want to have it open to the next time I open it and click save. And that way I'm always starting out on the same place. Does that make sense? It's one of those little tricks that Excel doesn't tell you anywhere. You just kind of have to figure out by trial and error. But it's a huge, huge, huge help if you just get in the habit of doing that. So a couple of things now. We're going to open I am going to let me open a Word document here, and then we're going to type up some stuff here, some things to pay attention to. So just give me 1 second. So I think you just showing like blank stuff at the moment. Oops, hang on. I guess we have to wait a second because Word's not. Here we go. Okay. So since I don't know what happened to my whiteboard, we're just going to use this. So let me make this a little bigger. Whoops, too big. Okay, and I will do giant font so everybody can read it. Okay, so things to pay attention to. Okay, so things to pay attention to. You want to make sure that you have all the components in your document, okay? I recommend you can either do the executive summary can be either in the case study as a separate tab or an additional document. Okay, either way, your choice on that. Just make sure you've got both the executive summary and the case study file, okay? So you need all components of the case study. You need to, it has to be in PDF. Okay, and there are several people who either didn't put it in PDF or they didn't name it correctly. So if you don't name it correctly, I'm going to return it. So make sure you name files correctly. So for a reminder, for those of you who've forgotten, you want to do last name, first initial, dot homework 1. So mine, if I'm turning in my files, I'm going to do all in K. This is homework number 2. And then I might have case study. Okay, because I have one, if I'm going to do 2, and then I might have all in K homework 2. Oops, not homework at. And I might have, or I might just do it, label them part A, part B. Okay, so the first tab in it, I usually put for me, the way that I usually set it up. Okay, so let's go back up here. We're gonna do this. So my setup, this is my preferred setup. You can set it up in a different way. So my setup, I like to have my tabs like this. So my first tab is going to be executive summary. Again, this is me. The second one, oops, is going to be the, oh, what did I call it over here? Please hold while I go find that file. You can call it, so I might call it, the table of contents. And then go into analysis. And then et cetera, et cetera. One thing I will tell you too is it's to your benefit to put each of your data pulls on its separate data tab. And I will tell you, I have not yet had a student run out of tabs. There is a limit in Excel, but I've never once had a student yet run out of tabs. So in terms of organizing your data, don't try to just put it all in one tab. Try to put it on separate tabs and label the tabs so that you can find it again. So the faster you can find the data, the faster you can answer that question when you're standing there in a meeting or you're sitting in a meeting and somebody says, well, where did that data came from? I don't think I know where, I don't believe that. You can go right here and say, or how did you come up with that analysis or that finding? You can go straight to your data tab and say, well, here it is on, this tab right here. Now on your data tabs, another thing with this is you want to make sure that you are, I'll do this too. So make sure you have two things on your data tabs. On your data tab, you need to have the data source. So ID your data source. And then the second thing is add any comments. So along the lines of, why did I keep this data? What does it show me? So think about those things. And the workbook, you can save it wherever you want. I don't really care because you're going to basically save it to someplace you can get back to it. Because like I said, some of the data that we're going to be pulling in course 3, you have the option to reuse that data mining in course 4. So figure out where you want to save it so that you can get at it again. Okay, so you can save it in the H drive or you can save it within Pyramid. I think most people end up saving it in the H drive just because it's an Excel file. So you can save it on your personal drive or you can save it in Pyramid. Totally your call. And I don't need Pyramid screenshots necessarily. Some people like to put kind of like rabbit trail, not rabbit trail, what am I thinking? Hansel and Gretel, where they drop all the crumb trail. There we go, breadcrumbs on their data as well. So an optional one is a breadcrumb trail. So, or how did I get this data? Did I find it? So some people like to keep track of what were all of your, what were the filters and the slices that you used in Pyramid in order to get this particular output. Some people don't. Totally your call on that. Some people use screenshots for that and just stick a screenshot at the end. So you might want to, that as an optional, putting that breadcrumb trail in there is, something that you might want to consider. I tend to forget what I did, so I like to put a lot of that. I put a lot of extra things in because I tend to go on to another project and come back to something and try to, instead of, what we're trying to do here is get you guys to the point where you don't have, if you need to pull the data again or somebody asks a question, you're not trying to recreate what you did, but you can just go to it and say, here's the answer right now. Does that make sense? So that's more what we're trying to get you to do with this with this case study file. Okay, so you've got your case study set up. Make sure you have on your data on your data tabs, these different things. You have to have it in PDF. Make sure you name your files correctly. Okay, you can, like I said, you can do it. Oops. You can also do it part A, part 1. Just don't name it homework 2 because all of you are submitting homework 2. So I don't know whose homework 2 it is. And when I download these, they download everyone's assignment in a single batch. So if I get assignments and I have no idea what it is, if I can't figure out who it belongs to, you're going to get it. I'm going to send it back to you for renaming because it just gets lost in my files. And I really, really don't want to have that happen. If it's a situation where that does happen, what you will see is you will either see a 0 or you will see your assignment reopen itself. Okay, so I will open it up again. I'll probably give you a 0 and say, please resubmit. And I will open the file again for submitting. Good question. So executive summary. So executive summary, key things, 1 page or less. Okay, 1 page or less. Okay, so 1 page or less with the executive summary, and I'll get to your question, Laura, in just a minute. So 1 page or less in your executive summary. You want to have key points. So so think about it. I'm guessing some of you have probably done the 30-second elevator speech training. Like, we were on an elevator. We're going to ride for 3 floors. Tell me about your data findings. So you want to do key points. So I usually say, what do you mean by key points is what I get asked. So key points is about kind of 1 sentence, 1 to 2 sentences, maybe 2 sentences, depending on. So 1 to 2 sentences for each of those main kind of main points, main areas. Okay. So you do 1 to 2 points at, you say, okay, here's what, what did you ask me to investigate and why? Here's the data I used and where it came from. Here is my findings. Um, a few sentences around the findings, and here's what I think we should do next. A couple of those. Okay, so 1 page or less. And 1 page or less is the text body. So the body text. Okay, so that doesn't have to, you don't have to keep it 1 page or less and include like a header, a memo header on it. So the body of the text though should be 1 page or less, no more than 1 page. And that's why like I said, I like to put it personally um, as the first tab, just because then everything's all in one place. Because that way I can copy and paste it into an email, I can copy and paste it into a Word document and send it as a PDF, I can have it, but it's all in my one thing. So basically what you're doing with this case study format is you're coming up with a one-stop shop of keeping everything in the same place. So you're not hunting through, how many of you, just, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you have gone through your H drive or any other drive trying to find all the different pieces of a file of a data project that you've been working on and you don't know where they are? I know I have done that before I started doing this case study format. Um, I have definitely done that. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it so you are not that person anymore. You have one file per kind of one main file with all the conclusions and everything. You might have a couple of additional files, like with your pyramid data, you might pull that out. Um, and the thing too, when you're keeping track of data, your data sources, one thing that I found helpful is to track which data sources were helpful and which were not. So in your section on your data, where did you find the data? I also like to put in there which were helpful and which were not, because that way I can start building my knowledge base of what I've had and what is in which cube. Because as I'm sure all of you have now found, if you didn't already know, the VA is awash in data, and there's pros and cons to that, right? There's a pro is that you've got a ton of data, right? There's all kinds of data on anything you can pretty much think of. You guys have data on it, and it's longitudinal. You've got data over time on it, on thousands of patients. And the flip side, the con to that is you've got a ton of data and it's hard to find stuff sometimes. So there's pros and cons to it. And so that's where getting this case study kind of set up like this will just help you going forward. Okay, so now to get, did that answer your question, Anita, about executive summary, or did I wander too far off into the flower fields? Just, you can kind of let me know. If not, don't worry about it. Then if you're going to do a group, so what you would do if I were going to be with, to use Laura, to just use you as an example here. So if we were going to do it as a group, I would list my name, and then I would list your name, and then I would list homework 2, and then part 1, part A, part whatever, .edf. Okay. Yeah, you can also use, if you are used to the military format for an executive sum, which uses bullets, you can definitely do that too. Basically, the executive summary is you want to give enough information that someone can decide, especially somebody who's probably higher up than you, can decide, do they need more details or not? Is this something we need to look at or not? So that's why I kind of usually say, think about that elevator speech. So yeah, you can definitely use the bullet points version. So if you've got military background and you're used to using that bullet point version, totally fine. What I would probably say is, give yourself like a sentence of introduction, and then here's my bullets for finding, and then, here's how I can be reached if you want more information, blah, blah. And like I said, the reason that we're going to have you do the executive summary, you can either do it as a separate document or you can do it all in one as a case study. But I personally like to keep it in one place because I have a tendency to um, spend a lot of time looking for documents that I know I have and can't remember where I put them. So if you are not that kind of person and you have a great file organization hierarchy, you don't necessarily have to put your executive summary into your case study. I just personally like to have it as the first tab. So you can do it either way. Again, if you use, you can also use bullets. So you can use bullets. You can use bullet points for your key points, totally fine. Either way, you still need to keep it 1 page or less for the text body. Okay. And it's looking like, I think that might be all we have. We're at 10:30 right now. And I don't want to hold up anybody time-wise just because we ended up scheduling this over. So does anybody have any additional questions? That I've covered everything that I got, I think, questions in email. If you sent me a question in email and you're on today and I did not answer it, go ahead, send me another one, and I will try to go ahead and get that answered. So if you have any other questions, definitely send me an email. I will try to get those answered as quickly as possible. You will also start seeing your, for those of you who didn't have a file return because I couldn't figure out it's not in the right format or the naming is off, you should start seeing your feedback files come back to you starting today and tomorrow. And if you have any questions, if you cannot read my handwriting, please, please, please let me know. Okay, the goal of this course, it is not graded on a curve, it is graded straight points. And my goal is to get every single person who takes this course to pass it. So with that, you guys had some great questions. Thanks a lot for attending today. Um, if you have any other questions, let me know, and we will. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what you guys come up with. So again, thanks everybody for attending. I am sorry that we ended up having the mix-up for Tuesday, and again, this is recorded, so you can let any of your colleagues and coworkers know that. If they need to look at it, it will be posted up shortly. So it should be hopefully up there this afternoon, and we'll send out a note when it is posted up to the website. So thanks everybody, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon. Goodbye.